All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us and welcome to HashiCorp Live. So today what we're going to be working on is something a little bit different. For everyone who saw the community office hours earlier this week with Tracy, we had a wonderful conversation around our product delivery team and how they are working to enable individuals to better use our runtime applications with some reusable, compostable Terraform modules. Today, what we're going to be doing is diving into specifically the AWS Nomad Starter with the intention of showing how that can be used for an initial startup and how to get going with Nomad. Now, with that in mind, we're also going to play a little bit of a story in the background here. And the story is myself and Jackie, who has graciously joined me today, are playing the roles of a distributed team. We're in a position where I, as a practitioner, want to go through and add Nomad to my existing infrastructure. Normally, the workflow would be I pull the module from the registry and try and run it in my system, and then from there, iterate on my infrastructure. So that's what we're going to be doing today, is we're going to go through and pull all of our resources together to live code adding this Nomad infrastructure. What we're also going to be doing is demonstrating how easy it can be to go through and make these commits back as open source contributions. Now, one of the reasons why this is going to be important, we're going to share later on in the special. But for right now, what we're going to do is just go ahead and dive into what we're working on today. With that, give me just one moment to pull up everything. Jackie, is there anything that you wanted to hop on and say as well too?
Sure. I mean, I think it'd probably be good to say who we are as like an introduction too.
Yes. Fire away. Apologies.
Yeah, sure. No worries. Hey, I'm Jackie Gernrod. I'm a developer developer advocate here at HashiCorp, and I generally work with the Nomad team, and I'll also be working a bit with Waypoint going in the future and focusing on kind of like your runtime applications and how you do orchestration. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Jackie. And for those who don't know, hi, my name is Jono Sosolska, developer advocate and technical community manager. I futz around a fair bit with console service mesh, and we'll be looking to introduce that here shortly. Some of the work that we are doing, you'll see some of the links dropping in on the Twitch chat. For one moment here. These are going to be the links for what we are working on today. So if you take a look at that module, give me just one moment, I'll share my screen here. If we take a look at the module that we're working with today, we have this Nomad Starter. Most of the time, what you'll do is you'll grab this provision instructions and you'll be able to go through and launch your Nomad application. Some other things to just provide a frame of reference for what we're doing. This registry links to the module definition here in GitHub. We'll be doing pull requests against this repository as well as pushing and pulling our branches. So feel free to take a look. Some of the other things you'll see is we do have a run of Terraform Cloud here. This will be used through our command line applications moving forward. So without further ado, let me pull up some of the code we'll be looking at. In a similar way of running our applications in a distributed manner or as a distributed team, we'll probably have our resources located in a repository. For that, I'm using this repo called Team DA Infrastructure. And you see it has a lot of the infrastructure we've already spun up, namely our VPCs, the information that we need to hook up to Terraform Cloud, the providers that we'll be running through, and some of our AWS configuration. This particular repository won't be public, and you'll see us reference it lightly. But as we're moving through, just be aware that this Team DA infra is where we're trying to push our actual resources into our infrastructure. The next portion that we have, and we'll see this over here, is the actual Terraform for the AWS Nomad Starter. And as we're going through this, you're going to see us making changes here and iterating on them, and then trying to pull those changes into our infrastructure as a deployment. Now, there's one other additional set of steps that we're not necessarily showing right now, and this is going through and getting your security for your deployment process dialed in. At HashiCorp, we have an internal set of guidelines that allow us to deploy our resources. So similarly, you won't see us grabbing AWS secret keys or things like that while on this stream. If you do see anything that is, hey, I can use this pattern, or hey, I'm missing a step, please feel free to drop it in the chat, as we'll have other people asking those questions as well too, and we want to try and answer those questions live. So with that in mind, just want to check in. Jackie, are you able to access the systems that we're trying to get access to right now?
Well, we're working on it. I've got the live share code up. I believe I've requested access because I had to do some other stuff here to be able to run anything in the terminal. And yeah.
I believe I just gave you that access.
Perfect.
So with that in mind, and let me know when you send over that other one. So what I'm going to do is, as the person who's looking to add to my infrastructure, I'm going to create a branch and start piloting.
Also, just a moment. You're sharing your Google Docs view, and I'm not sure if that's the one you were looking to share.
Thank you.
No problem. I mean, this is why it's HashiCorp Live, and it's like, don't run this in production. We're here. We're going to make some learnings. We're going to make some mistakes, and it happens with screen sharing too. So
just to check, are we seeing my terminal window? And
yep, we have the terminal window, and we have Team DA infra is the one you're sharing right now.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off with a branch. I don't necessarily want to push straight to master and start deploying infrastructure just yet. So all right, and so I have this branch here where I'm going to say I'm going to add some nomads. I'm going to go through and create a new file. And we'll do nomad.tf, and this is going to reference a single nomad cluster running in a single region as we move forward here. So as I mentioned before, one of the things that we should be able to do right out of the gate is take the provision instructions and go ahead and drop them right in. I want to go one step further because in some instances we may be running this in more dynamic ways. So we'll also want to check out the README. An example of the module's definition can be found in the README. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a version of this and just try running it and see what ends up happening here. Give me just 1 second to pull this. Still seeing Team DA infra?
Yep.
Awesome. So,
and I guess also just for anyone watching, if the text feels small or anything's hard to read, please just let us know and we'll zoom it in some more for you. Yeah.
Yes, please. All right, so I went through, I added this, I saved the file, git status, cool, it's seeing nomad.tf. I'm going to clean up my code a little bit. That's substantially nicer. I'm going to do a clear my Terraform just to be safe. All right, and going to go ahead and run a Terraform in it, and it's going to try and find the module. And we've hit the first kind of roadblock here, which is, what if the module definition that you have isn't what you need? So let's kind of run through this and see kind of the errors that Terraform is giving out to us. First and foremost, it can't go find this module on the Terraform registry. So there's going to need to be some changes. From the website that you saw me grab earlier, the path for it is actually along here with the HashiCorp Nomad Starter AWS. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and grab that location. And I'm also going to, he wants to agree with me. I'm also going to grab that version number that's there. And you'll notice a couple different things. First off, I included the V in the tag number. You don't need that. And second off, it does use a source path. here that doesn't have the github.com or anything else like that. Reason being is because Terraform registry, Terraform, when it runs a module, looks first at the registry. If the path matches up, it'll go through and grab it. So in this instance, we're saying go to the registry, grab this release version and deploy it out. So let's go ahead and hi Kubernetes, bye Kubernetes. Let's go through and run a Terraform in it. That's what I need to do. Oh. It couldn't find that one. That's odd. Interesting. It's not finding the one that I dropped in. Let's see. Jackie, is there anything you see me missing right off the bat?
Let me double check in my editor because it's easier to read there.
Sounds good. I'm going to pull up another set of notes that I have. Thank you all for being patient. In the meantime, what I'll also do is see if any of our friendly folks around have any other suggestions for what I may be missing. Chat, what say you? GitHub repo instead. Don't think it's in the module registry. Well, let's go ahead and give that a shot. So we have the link for it. Here. Use this. And we're going to jump back into here. I believe it's going to be git :path. And just check some of my resources here. For those who don't know, the language syntax has been provided on the Terraform docs, and it's quite helpful. You can find anything related to GitHub. So here we see that we can source directly from GitHub without needing the git prefix. And we'll just go from there. See if Terraform's a little happier there. It has a non-registry URL. But I should be able to give non-registry URLs. Source equals com/, yep, that's the repository. Yep. Oh, did I forget a .git?
Rosemary is in chat suggesting that we might need to remove the version constraint as well.
All right, let's give that a shot. Look at that. Thank you so much, Rosemary. Much appreciated. Cool. So we've gone through, we've pulled the source, and the funny thing about version constraints, we now have some issues with the version constraint. So this is a workflow that sometimes people don't get to see in action. And this is what happens over time, especially if you use a module that solves the needed use case early on and then remains unmaintained or potentially doesn't iterate as rapidly as some of the APIs further up. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to look how we can make some changes on the Nomad Starter module side in a branch, pull those changes in and try and work on some of these updates. So Jackie, I just wanted to check in with you. Did you want to jump in and make the changes on the starter module side? If not, I can pilot it on mine.
It might be easier to just keep it on yours so we're not switching context for now. And it might be worth seeing kind of how that goes. I'm not sure if we
Sounds
can
good.
handle all of the version changes in this repository,
Cool.
but we can try.
So what I'm going to do is check my local branches. You'll see that I've spent a little bit of time looking at this before, so I'll have that on hand. I'm going to do, for frame of reference, I'm on the AWS Nomad Starter. Now you may need to end up forking if you're going to be running your own version of this to make your changes, but the workflow looks similar if it was a branch and a fork. Sorry, looks similar if this was a private repository and I was trying to access this from my private VCS. So I'm going to do a checkout-b, and we're going to do CL update versions. It'd be good if my branch didn't have spaces in it. Awesome. So now we're here. And this is where I personally have ran into issues before. I'm not sure if other people have, but how do you keep the context of where am I doing this work and how am I iterating on it? And this is part of the reason why I have two VS Code terminals open. On the one side, I can say, this is where I've confined my changes in a branch. And on the other side, I can say, okay, this is where I'm going to try deploying those changes and iterating through them. Within the Nomad module itself, one of the files that we're going to be taking a look at here is versions. Now, from our other errors here, we can see could not retrieve the list of available versions for provider AWS. No available releases match the given constraints of 3.2, 3.2, 270, etc. This can start to be challenging to trace, but we're going to try and simplify it for you all by showing you what we have available right out of the gate. So within our AWS, you can see that we have a version of greater than 3.2. With our providers here, I'm going to go ahead and just close this momentarily. Oh, it's not the close I was looking for. You'll see that we have 3.2 and then a bunch of other providers that we have. So Jackie, I'm going to go through and update these, and we're going to see if we can get these to run. Real quick, would you be able to help me out on what that tilde greater than is? I see it here, but I don't end up seeing it here.
That's a good question. I don't actually remember. I thought it was saying that it doesn't need to be exactly that version and that it could be like roughly it or greater. But if somebody in chat knows, I'd be more than happy to see that.
You know, I think that's actually what it is. And this is one of those ways that Terraform is really flexible, is that here we have a really hard set version constraint in the Nomad module, but we don't necessarily have that constraint in our infrastructure where we may be putting different modules from different times or places into our infrastructure. So for anyone who runs into this in the future, I hope this ends up helping you out. One of the things that I'm going to do is I'm going to force a version upgrade for the provider up to version 3.0 in this instance. And what I'm going to do is make it so that way the version that I have can match what my personal infrastructure is. If anyone wants to ask additional questions in chat, please feel free to fire off. I'd love to hear how other people have used these version constraints before or what they may have ran into in the past as well.
Just to chime in, according to chat and a coworker, it appears to be that it's actually pinning to that last number, so equal to greater than in the last digit.
Equal to or greater than the last digit. So in that case, it's going to be the 3.2. Check yes. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull some of the other ones. We've brought this up to 3.2. This now has the 3.2. And just to kind of cut ahead here, I'm going to make sure that all of these have this tilde squiggle, just so that way we can open up for future history. Okay. So now Is account grade at 3.3, but not 4.0. Ah, yes. So the tilde greater than is between major versions from what I'm seeing there. All right, so we see the versions that we've updated here, but I don't necessarily want to push this to the starter module right out of the gate, right? I want to make sure that the changes that I'm making are what I expect them to, and I'm not going through and just making churn in a shared repository of versions. So here's what I'm going to go ahead and do. Apologies for that. I'm going to do a git add of my versions, git commit -m, bumping AWS up to 3.2 plus. I want to make sure I give a good explanation of what I'm going to be going through and doing here. Now, as I mentioned, we haven't pushed this up, so how do I get this reference? I'm going to go back to my infrastructure page that has the nomad.tf. And instead of having the source pinned to master and main, I'm going to go through and have it pinned to a branch. And the way that I'm going to do that is going to be as such. So on that same language server page, there's a portion that gives you what is the standard git notation for being able to make a reference to a specific commit or a specific branch. In this instance, this is where having two terminal windows helps, because I can separate out where I'm working in, especially because my branches don't necessarily line up with each other. So I'm going to grab a branch and then do this, and go through and just save my changes, git status, and open this up. So I'm going to show that status one more time. Awesome. Terraform format. And then well, that might be because I didn't do a push. There we go. Got to remember to do my git commands. All right, so let's do another init here and see. Looks like it was able to find it. And we'll see what comes up as we're going along here. Now, because of this, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take this branch that we were working on. I'm going to go through and open up a PR once I validate that it's doing more or less what I expected. And we're going to iterate from there. Rather than have folks wait for my terminal to load up, just wanted to offer, Jackie, anything that you're looking to chime in with here?
No, not at the moment.
Cool. And there we go. Terraform has successfully initialized. Let me see what happens where I do a plan. Now, as this plan is running, you'll notice some yellow text here. And what this is doing is it's running our plan through Terraform Cloud. And what this does is it gives us the ability to more granularly control our permissions for how and when a plan runs, but also provide an area where we can collaborate together to be able to see what's going on and how. And while we're waiting for this to run, I'm actually going to kind of spoiler this a little bit here. I'm expecting the errors that you see here. But what we're going to do is before we go troubleshooting more errors, I'm going to go through and get a PR going for this. So that way we can track what we've done and kind of provide more actionable feedback for the maintainers of this module as we go forward. So with that, let me just pull that up real quick. Up here in pull requests, there's a pull request that I have. And you'll notice here that nothing populated. So I'm going to give a little bit of context. For those who haven't worked with pull requests before, they do use Markdown language, which I very much enjoy. So I'm just going to give some formatting here. And that's good there. Just in case, I'm going to see if there was anything else that I changed. Nope. All right, so we have that pull request currently created. Now, what if we want to keep iterating? Because maybe the work that we have, we want to keep driving forward. So I'm going to go through and open up another set of branches. So that way we can keep our changes isolated, but still be able to track their relationship. I'm going to prep for that just with that. Cool. So we've gone through, we've updated a portion of our module, we've tested it locally, and we've validated that, yes, it's doing a little bit more of what I want. But now how do I go through and kind of pick these apart? I'm going to start from, let's see, we have a lot of different things here. So I'm going to start with this. Within the Terraform modules, the Nomad cluster main line 46 has something that goes through and conflicts. I'm just going to check, Jackie, or any of our viewers at home. Has anyone seen some of these show up before in the past?
You moved away while I was reading the errors, so
sorry about that. Do that. So we have VPC zone identifier and then conflicts with availability zones. These are saying that these two particular items conflict with each other because it seems like they're referencing each other in a way that doesn't make sense. So we're going to try and make this a little bit more specific here. Now, what we're going to do is hop over to Nomad cluster main. And let's take a look at what we're dealing with here.
Just coming out of chat, there's a suggestion that it looks like the variable isn't set right and that we might need to use an actual cider block.
An actual cider block, was that? Cool.
Yeah.
All right, so in this main file, which has a bunch of different data sources that we're looking at here, you pull this down so we can see some more of it. We're seeing the AWS availability zones, state as available. So this seems to be one data source it was referencing. Availability zone, available zone IDs. And then the other one we were looking for was VPC zone identifier here. The suggestion from chat was actual cider block. So the cider block reference, I believe, was used for the incoming cider block, which is part of this particular module. So here, this list of inbound ciders is used as the module, or used in the module to allow permissions from a specific set of ciders. This can be useful, especially if you want to connect your local machine while trying out these modules, or if you're on a corporate network and you have an IP address space that you want access from to this within your running VPC architecture. But I'm not going to jump in on that one just yet. All right, so we're looking at this zone identifier. I wonder if we just need to do this. Because the data is referencing availability zones here or saying, hey, grab it from here. Okay. I'm going to do an additional commit to save that. Oops. New terminal. I'm going to do check out -b, update AZ errors. So you'll notice that I created a new branch that's for updating for the AZ errors, but I haven't made any changes just yet. This is that way GitHub can go through and track it. Gone through and updated the VPC zone identifier. So I'm just going to make a commit that shows that change. And I'm going to push that up to that new branch that I used. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that branch name, again, the branch that I was doing on the AWS Nomad Starter side, and I'm going to update it over here.
So I guess while we're back in this file, it might be good to kind of take a step back and just explain what we're expecting this module to deploy.
Yeah, absolutely. Dive right in.
Okay, well, I haven't had a chance to look at it that much, but it is a Nomad module for starting. So
yeah, so while we're here, sorry about that, Jackie. While we're here, what we're trying to do is we're trying to match in some form what we expect the standard Nomad architecture to be. Now, for those who haven't taken a look at the Nomad docs, there's a great Learn guide talking about the Nomad deployment guide. But in short, you have a control plane, which we're saying here on line 11, we want 5 Nomad servers. And then we're saying that we want 3 Nomad clients in order to be the workers for the jobs that we intend to set up here. What we're also doing is this particular module gives you the ability to roll your own console. So that way you can go through and deploy Nomad with its service mesh capabilities as well, allowing you to play with both sets of features, especially if you haven't had a chance to use console before. So that's where you get these additional versions here. One of the other things that I'd just like to call out, there's an intentional step that I created and then also not created. And I just want to go through and address it for anyone watching the recording. We haven't actually created this key name yet, and that's going to come into play a little bit later when we get there. But that's intentional because there are many different cases where you may want to provide your own key, or you may not want to care about the key once the infrastructure that you have is already set up. And then you can use something like Boundary to manage access to those hosts in the future. Anything else that I missed about the module definition, Jackie?
that's a good question. I'm assuming that on top of deploying it, we're also controlling what versions it's going to be. I don't know if we're doing Packer like the ones that I normally work with, so I'm not quite sure how we're passing that information in.
Actually,
yeah,
that's a great question. Let me go ahead and dive into that. So with the Nomad Starter modules, and for anyone who, like I mentioned at the beginning, had a chance to, or hasn't had a chance to look at the community office hours that Tracy released earlier this week / yesterday, talk to the product or listen to the product delivery folks as they talk about what they're trying to create here. For some practitioners, the barrier to entry for some modules was Packer. I know I personally was fortunate enough to work with Packer for a little bit. And so when you see this Packer and Terraform style of deployments, that's a very opinionated way of going about through and doing deployments. For more flexibility, for more dynamacy, maybe for even more experimentation, you can just use Terraform by itself and use templatized scripts in order to make these able to be deployed. So for frame of reference, what's happening here in the main system is we're having an auto scaling group be brought up with the Nomad servers. For those who may be unfamiliar with AWS, auto-scaling groups and their launch configurations are used to define repeatable virtual machine structures. And with that, you can define things like the Amazon machine image. Packer helps us create the Amazon machine images for repeatable images, but for some design patterns or teams, they may choose for a scripted way to install these services. So that's why you have this script folder here where we're using the really awesome work that they've done for these package managers to both install the console version and Nomad versions that we defined at the top of our module. Cool. So now that we've done that, I'm just going to go through and try this one more time. There's been changes, so let's do an init and pull this up here. Cool, we're good on that. Terraform run through. And what we were looking for was remove zone identifier. So we're going to see if, all right, looks like that's valid. We're going to run a plan and see if we get any of those zone IDs back. Is there, okay, while we're waiting for that to run, Jackie, I see we have some questions. Do you mind if I actually answer that chat question that was thrown out there?
Yeah, sure. And just for anyone who's watching this after, the chat question was if there's a way that we can deploy this module without with just Nomad and so not including console.
And currently it looks like the module does not offer that. So one of the things that we can do is, let me just pull up the repository here. All right, so we have this one here for provider support. Go through and create a new issue for a feature request here. Okay, so I have that ready to submit, which we'll submit after the end of this, or for anyone who's online, feel free to go through and submit the issue as well too. Have that as a placeholder. And from the plan output, so we're still running into conflicts with VPC zone identifier. But I moved it. It's up to date. I pushed it. I'm referencing the branch. It's all good. All right, so we're still running into these conflicts. Sorry for the back and forth, folks. Just making sure that I've done all my saves and pushes. Update AZ errors. Update AZ errors. Okay. Don't know if this will work the way that I want it to. I apologize in advance. That did not work the way that I wanted it to. Okay. Okay. So does this have VPC ID, public ID? Nope, that's all correct. And that's all expected. So then the next thing is inbound sliders, clients, version, connect, email. It's all the same. And move the VPC zone identifier there. Is there another VPC zone identifier I maybe missed? That seems to be the only one. Ah, I see that in the chat. So Louise says, starting at version 3.0 of the AWS provider, availability zones and VPC zone identifier became conflicting parameters. That would make sense. So when we went through and updated from 2.0 to 3, we ended up with a conflict for that. So in that case, I probably need to do this and then further up. Let me just check. All right, so that's the only reference to availability zones I can see so far. Got that. What was it? So VPC subnet identifier, is that it? VPC zone identifier, that's what it was. Okay. I wonder if I will need to remove Terraform and go from that. So to recap what we've done so far, pulled the module down, made sure that it was pulling a module, updated the versions for it, and now we're just troubleshooting some version incompatibilities between feature sets. And as I mentioned before, this is not a workflow that many people often have a chance to experience and work through, at least in a live coding setting like this. Most of the time, I would say it's something's broken and we have to go figure it out on our own. And so from an operational point of view, this is actually a pretty common workflow. That being said, certainly wouldn't mind for this initialization to move a little faster. There we go, we're good. And then I really like Terraform, so I wrote it twice there. All right, and then plan. Cool. Well, that plan's going. I'm just going to fill in a little bit of information here.
I guess while you're filling that out, I know we talked a little bit about like what kind of practices would be good. So for anyone who's watching who maybe wants to fill out their own issue, what kind of things does the team look for so that we can help that get in there and get looked at faster?
Yeah, absolutely. So in speaking with some of the individuals from product delivery, they highlighted that the things they would like to see are what the feature request is, usually in some details, what a workflow looks like in particular. So this is less about saying, oh, I want to add support for another technology in this module, and instead saying, what can we do to make this module by itself do what we need it to? So the feature request, a description of what we want to see happening, the use cases. So you can do this in as a developer or as an operator type of format. You can submit them. You can also submit with them what you don't expect a system to do. So for example, in this, we're saying we want Nomad to go through and reach out to the console cluster. Are we expecting this module to go through and configure ACLs for us? Are we expecting it to retrieve and expose those tokens? Are those the types of things that we want in it? Those use cases then give us the opportunity to both signpost things that would be good future improvements, but also identify if there's a pattern we ourselves are practicing that could use feedback on. So in this particular instance, mine would be, I want to be able to launch console on my own, but my console is going to be in a different data center. How do I go through and pass that information to it? That type of feature request looks very different than I have a locally running version of console that I just want to reference in my infrastructure. And so those types of details can work very well. Now, I also do want to encourage, for those who may not speak English as a first language, please feel free to include as much detail as you can. If you are writing in a language that you feel more comfortable with, please be patient with us in some of our responses, but also include what that language is in your post, because it allows us to better identify how we can cross that language barrier. And this applies to a lot of different repositories. I've had several instances where I've seen really well-written PRs come in, and most of them are in Mandarin or Cantonese. And it's, for me, exciting to be able to see, hey, this is how our practitioners in other forms of the world are going through and using our items. Anything else that you wanted me to throw on there, Jackie?
No, I think that's good. Other than like of course, please, if you do have like use cases that you think we should be filling and they're not there, do submit them. We do want to hear our feedback from our community, and yeah, everything else you said.
Awesome. So let me see where my, all right, so we came back here and it's still coming up. Ah, that's why. In our Nomad clients, that's what I was missing. And this is why reading the full file path can help. We're going to go into Nomad clients. We're going to find VPC zone identifier. Going to comment that out. Actually, I removed it previously, so I'll do that. And I'll see no other references to VPC. Status. Oh, that's not what I wanted. Get identifier from clients. I would also like to encourage folks to understand when -f is good to use and not so good to use. So this is a personal anecdote while we're waiting for this to go through. I have used rm-rf once in this, and as well as git push-f. And in those instances, you want to understand the implications of what it is you're doing. For me personally, since I've isolated my work into a branch, I feel fine manipulating time and history within my own local branch to do pushes, rebases, things of those nature. do not recommend, and in fact, many times there are going to be branch protections against this that keep you from force pushing to a shared branch like main or master. All right, so we've gone through, we've finished. No, still getting that conflicts. Why is that? Clients 12, clients 5. Clients 12, clients 5. Nope, that's the availability zones. I want it to reference data, AWS availability zone, available zone IDs. Let's take a look at this data. Okay. Provider. And I want availability zones. The zones are availability zones. Okay. So this is a piece of information that we actually have in the main.tf. Just going to show that too. So in our main.tf on this side, you can see that we have for availability zones, data available. So I'm going to grab a similar one and include it here. So that way it's locally available. And let's check here. Okay, I'm going to push that branch. Already declared in there. Resource must be unique. Guess I don't need that one then. I wonder if we were seeing those issues because I didn't redo the init. Let's see. Do git log. All right, so those following at home, this is what I meant for manipulating time. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do one of these. Git git reset git log. So now we see that times move backwards a step, but now I'm out of sync with my repository ahead. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually just totally remove that last commit. So now my upstream has the information that I was looking for. Pulling that down. While we're waiting for this init to run, I'm seeing in chat there's a question. So are there official Nomad AMIs in AWS, or is it recommended to build your own with Packer instead? I see that Charlie also made a recommendation in there, so I'm going to echo Charlie's recommendation. build your own your own AMIs. This gives you granularity and control, as well as an opportunity to be familiar with Packer and what other runtimes you may need. There's also the benefit of the security aspect, where you can choose what goes into your AMIs and make them, in some cases, lighter or more extensible, so you have the tools that you need from the get-go. Jackie, do you have an opinion on the using public AMIs versus building your own?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much what you already said. I have a background in healthcare, so we kind of had some restrictions around the kind of images we could use, and we had to make sure that we had that kind of like base golden image that had been like properly vetted and run through. I mean, my recommendation generally would be that if you have the cycles and the resources available to you, because I know not all teams are willing to let you do that, or maybe you're a solo team, my recommendation would be to build your own images. I'd also had a previous conversation outside of the scope of this stream with Rosemary, who had suggested putting it in through user data as well. And that way we don't actually have to introduce another tool into the stack, being Packer. But yeah, I hope I paraphrased that right. So if I didn't, please tell me in chat because I know you're there. But yeah, that'd be thoughts on that one.
I'd be curious to hear Rosemary's response as well too. Looks like that's a yes. And you bring up a really good point too, right? There are teams out there that are pretty strapped. So how do we lower the barrier of entry as we go along? Seems like there's a little bit of a lag here. I'm still waiting for one last initialization over on this side. Maybe I'm getting rate limited by Terraform. Do, do, do. Okay. Just a call out for those who are watching this recording later. One of the patterns that is tried or recommended by a practitioner is to build an AMI with the versions that you are most likely going to use and allow them to be overridden in post-provisioning. So this could be done with user data or through another route. The reason there being that they didn't want to have to go through and build a matrix of all of the AMIs that they did and testing across all of those versions. Okay, I think Terraform is mad at me. Why are you in it so much? Ah, yes, I just had to talk about it. Okay. So we're letting this run through. The previous set of errors that I had gotten, so I might as well go through and just let them happen. Yeah, repo is struggle busing. Is var allowed citers. So I'm going to pull. I'm going to then very quickly change my IP after the stream. But I'm going to wait to see what we have going on here. For those watching at home, if you want to come to my IP address, all I ask is that you let me know that you're coming first. All right, there we go. And all right, so recapping, our versions are good. Terraform, while struggling, did manage to find our modules. It's going to go through and run the plan. Thankfully, not on my machine. And then we're going to go through and see what the next changes are. What I'm going to do is, if we've resolved the issue with respect to VPC zone identifiers, I'm going to submit a second PR with these changes. And the next time we go through and run these roadblocks should be removed for others. And we're taking a look here. Voila, no more VPC zone identifiers. So I'm going to go ahead and make a PR for this as well too. For those at home, feel free to jazz hands at your camera. It is definitely happy for me on Friday to be able to make headway on this one. So I'm going to come back over here. ICANN has a status, and it's going to open up a PR. So with that, I am seeing that we are at the top of the hour. Thank you for joining us today as we've worked on live coding a little bit more on the Nomad AWS Starter. You're going to be seeing a lot of these Nomad modules coming and going as we continue to work on them here during HashiCorp Live. One of the things that I'd encourage anyone who wants to start making open source contributions to do is please take a look at these modules, even if you feel like you're just a beginner at Terraform or Nomad, and look at how you could potentially contribute, either in documentation, issues, pull requests, things of that nature. We tried to lower the barrier of entry here during this stream to make it a little bit more accessible for other individuals. With that, though, I do want to make a shout out. So we have had our community office hours with the product delivery team. You'll be seeing more of them on other community office hours. We have several streams going next week, so please take a look at our stream and calendar. I'll go through and also include that information in the chat. Last but not least, we wanted to go through and say that this is one of the things we'll be looking towards working with our education team as well too. So if you have opinions or want to provide feedback on what using a Terraform module to run your different guides could look like and the impact that that has on your workflow, please feel free to reach out to us either on Discuss, Twitter, or through our email. Other than that, I think that covers most of it. Jackie, do you have anything that you'd like to say in closing as well too?
No, I think you covered most of it. If you're looking for more, I guess, Nomad stuff, we do actually have our big virtual day coming up next week. I believe it's on March 10th, where we'll be having some people, well, some folks come in, they'll be speaking. It's gonna be like one of our bigger events. I think we're planning on doing those once a quarter, and it's kind of like a full day or half day-ish of talks and content. Otherwise, I do believe you mentioned it with HashiCorp Live. I'm just trying to find the channel, and apparently I've lost it. Of course I have. I think I actually have 3 HashiCorp Lives coming up next week.
Yep, it's going to be a busy week for our streaming teams.
Yeah, on Monday, we're going to be talking about deploying a .NET application with Vault on Kubernetes. I can't even say that right now. Geez, Holy Friday. On Wednesday, we're going to be talking about how to use Shipyard. And on Friday, we're going to be doing another session of terraforming with Freeman. I don't know if Alexandra's still here, but she'll be doing that with Eric, I believe. The series started on YouTube as well. It's actually very great to watch. I had a good time watching it, and it kind of talks through like getting started in the basics. So yeah, I think that's about it for now.
Well, look forward to seeing you all on the virtual Twitterverse, Universe, or GitHub. Please feel free to reach out and tag me or anyone else to have a chat or provide feedback on this. And thank you all for spending time with us on this wonderful Friday. Have a good rest of your day.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Have a good weekend.